Let me tell you about the three great passions of my life, in order. Perfectly seasoned cast iron skillets, single malt scotch that's older than most of my employees, and fixing things that are broken. My name is Alexander Vance, but my friends call me Alex. I'm what you might call a connoisseur of fine problems, the kind that come with schematics and can be solved with the right tools and a good dose of patience. By day, I run Vance Innovations. We make those tiny, impossibly complex components that keep airplanes in the sky and smartphones in your pocket. It's not glamorous, but it's profitable enough that my biggest financial concern most days is whether to buy the 18-year-old Macallan or spring for the 25. I have a weakness for well-crafted things, you see, things that are built to last. Which brings me to my third passion, and my greatest failure, fatherhood. When Cameron was born, I thought I'd been handed the most perfect raw material in the world. I remember holding this tiny red-faced bundle and thinking, all right, Vance, this is your most important project yet. For the first 10 years, it was glorious. We built Lego castles that took up the entire living room. I taught him how to throw a spiral pass that would make Peyton Manning proud. He'd follow me around the garage, handing me tools and asking a million questions about how everything worked. Then came the teenage years. It was like watching a beautiful, precision-engineered machine suddenly grow legs and start demanding a sports car. The transformation was baffling. The boy who once thought helping me change the oil was the coolest thing in the world now considered it a human rights violation if his sneakers weren't the latest $300 limited edition release. Our disagreements became a tragic comedy of first-world problems. We went from arguing about bedtime to debating the socio-economic implications of vacation destinations. Bora Bora, Dad, he'd plead last year. The Millers went to Bora Bora. We're going to Italy, Cameron. You know, the country with thousands of years of history, art, and culture. Culture is boring. Bora Bora has overwater bungalows. It all came to a head yesterday, standing right there on my driveway. He'd just graduated high school, a fact I was immensely proud of. I was thinking about the future. He was thinking about a $150,000 fire-engine red Audi R8. When I said no, it wasn't just a no. In his eyes, it was a declaration of war. "It's not just the car," he yelled, his voice cracking with a drama usually reserved for Shakespearean actors. "It's everything. You bought me the wrong brand of headphones for my birthday. We flew commercial to Italy. You're embarrassing. All my friends' dads are cool. You're a terrible father." The words hung in the air, sucking all the sound out of the world. Terrible father. I looked at this young man, standing in the shadow of a house his mother and I built, wearing clothes my work paid for, and I thought about the school play I missed to close the deal that paid for his private school tuition. I thought about the silent auction I sat through for 3 hours to get him into that same school. A strange, cold calm settled over me. It was the same feeling I get when a multi-million-dollar machine on the factory floor breaks down, and I finally identify the one faulty, overpriced component causing all the problems. "Okay, Cameron," I said, my voice eerily quiet. He blinked, confused by my lack of yelling. "Okay? Okay, what? You'll get the car?" "No," I said, turning toward the house. "Okay, you've made your opinion perfectly clear." I walked into my study, the room where I'd planned his future since he was in diapers. I logged into the investment portfolio, labeled Cameron's Future. It was a beautiful 7-figure number, the result of 18 years of saying no to myself so I could say yes to him. I picked up the phone and called my financial advisor. "Mike, it's Alex Vance. I need you to liquidate the college fund, every last penny." The silence on the other end was deafening. "And Mike," I added, a grim smile touching my lips, "I want you to donate it, all of it, to the Bright Future Orphanage." I hung up. The most expensive component in my life had just been removed, and for the first time in years, the machine was finally running quiet. Walking back into the house after my phone call, I felt a strange sense of peace. It was the quiet satisfaction of an engineer who has just diagnosed a critical system failure and initiated the shutdown protocol. The chaos was contained for now. The peace lasted approximately 45 seconds. That's how long it took for Isabel, my ex-wife and Cameron's chief enabler, to descend. She didn't walk into the kitchen. She materialized, a whirlwind of floral perfume and maternal panic. "Alex, what did you do to him?" she demanded, her voice pitched to a frequency known to shatter glass and paternal resolve. "He's hysterical. He said you were heartless." "He called me a terrible father, Isabel," I said, my voice calm as I poured myself 2 fingers of a very fine Glenlivet, the 18-year-old. It felt appropriate. "He's just a boy," she cried, wringing her hands. "He's emotional. He didn't mean it." I took a slow sip, letting the smoky warmth spread through me. "He's an 18-year-old man who just demanded a 6-figure vehicle as a graduation gift. A boy doesn't get to disrespect the man who built the world he feels so entitled to." This has always been the fault line in our parenting. The reason our marriage now exists in separate zip codes. Isabel sees parenting as a never-ending apology tour for the trauma of existence. I see it as preparing a vessel to weather a stormy sea. She wants to give him a lighthouse. I want to teach him to sail. "He's our son," she pleaded, her eyes welling up. "You can't just cancel him because he hurt your feelings." "This isn't about my feelings, Isabel," I said, placing my glass down with a firm click. "This is about his character. And right now, his character is a spoiled, entitled brat who believes my sole purpose on this earth is to fund his Instagram lifestyle." From the hallway, I could see Cameron lurking, his phone pressed to his ear. He shot me a look of pure, smug triumph. He thought his mother's cavalry had arrived. He thought this was just another skirmish he could win with tears and manipulation. He didn't understand. This wasn't a battle. It was a paradigm shift. "I'm not canceling him," I said, my voice dropping, my gaze locking with Isabel's. "I'm cutting off the funding for the person he's pretending to be. The Cameron Vance I raised knows the value of $1. The one standing in our hallway thinks he's entitled to a fleet of them." I saw the flicker of understanding in her eyes, quickly buried under a fresh wave of anxiety. "But his future, Alex, the college fund, is no longer his," I said, finishing my scotch. "It's been donated. The transaction is complete." The color drained from her face. "Donated? To who?" "To 100 kids who've never had a fraction of what he's been given," I said, walking toward the hall. "Consider it an investment in gratitude." I passed Cameron in the hallway. The smugness was gone, replaced by a dawning, sickly confusion. The siege had begun, and for the first time in his life, his mother's walls had crumbled at the first assault. After Isabel left, taking a shell-shocked Cameron with her, the house was quiet again. But this silence was different. It was heavy, filled with the ghost of every yes I'd ever uttered. I sat in my study, the leather chair groaning a familiar complaint, and I did something I rarely allow myself to do. I questioned the blueprint. What is a father supposed to be? When Cameron was small, the manual was simple: provider, protector, the guy who could fix a broken toy and scare away the monsters under the bed. But somewhere between Legos and Lamborghinis, the job description changed. I was suddenly expected to be a silent partner, a limitless fund, a cheering section for a game I wasn't allowed to understand the rules of. I looked at the framed photos on my desk. There was Cameron at 6, beaming, holding up a lopsided birdhouse we'd built together. The pride in his eyes was real. Fast forward to a photo from last Christmas, him holding up the latest smartphone, the smile not quite reaching his eyes. It was a transaction. I had become a vending machine. Put in a little affection. Get out a new gadget. Isabel's voice echoed in my head. He's just a boy. But that was the problem, wasn't it? He wasn't. He was a young man standing on the launch pad of life, and I had spent years so focused on fueling the rocket, I'd failed to install the guidance system. I gave him everything he wanted, and nothing of what he needed. Grit, resilience, the simple, profound understanding that value is earned, not bestowed. This wasn't just about a car. This was about the foundational crack in the entire structure. Every time I'd given in, every time I'd smoothed over a consequence, every time I'd written a check to solve a problem, I'd been pouring sand into the foundation. Now, the whole thing was shifting, and my son was standing there, furious that the walls were cracking, blaming the architect. A terrible father? Maybe, but not for the reasons he thought. A good father would have let him fall and learned to get up. A good father would have said no to the third pair of limited edition sneakers. A good father would have taught him that a man's worth isn't in his wallet, but in his word, not in what he owns, but in what he builds. I had been an enabler, a facilitator of his own destruction. And the moment I finally stopped, the moment I finally tried to be the father he needed instead of the ATM he wanted, I became the villain in his story. Well, if that's the role I'm cast in, I might as well play it to the hilt. The enabling stops now. The vending machine is out of order permanently. It was time to stop building his castle and start teaching him how to lay bricks. For 2 days, I let the silence simmer. I went to work, tinkered with a stubborn hydraulic press, and enjoyed my scotch. I didn't call Cameron. I didn't call Isabel. I let the uncertainty become its own form of punishment. Let him wonder if the storm had passed, or if the eye was just passing over. On the 3rd day, I summoned him. Not with a plea, but with a text that was pure corporate efficiency. My office, 4 p.m., regarding your financial future. He arrived exactly on time, a flicker of his old smugness returning. He'd probably convinced himself I'd come to my senses, that this was all a negotiation tactic. He slouched into the chair across from my desk, trying to look bored. I trust you've had time to reflect, I began. My tone as neutral as a quarterly earnings report. It was a stupid fight, Dad, he said with a practiced sigh. Let's just forget it. We can go to the dealership this weekend. I saw a black one with a carbon fiber package that's even nicer. I almost admired the audacity, the sheer unshakable belief that his reality was the only one that mattered. The money is gone, Cameron. He blinked. What? What? The college fund. The trust. It's no longer in our possession. He sat up straight, the feigned boredom replaced by genuine confusion. You moved it? To a different account? For tax reasons or something? No, I said, folding my hands on the desk. I donated it, in its entirety. The confusion twisted into disbelief, then into dawning horror. You? To the Bright Future Orphanage, I said, my voice calm and clear. They're establishing a new vocational training center. They were incredibly grateful. They're even putting a plaque on the door. It's going to be called the Cameron Vance Wing. For a moment, he just stared at me, his brain refusing to process the information. I could see the gears grinding to a halt. His future, his security, his identity, all of it, given away to a bunch of strangers. And with his name on it, like he'd approved the transaction. His face turned a mottled red. You did what? He finally exploded, shooting to his feet. You gave my money away? To an orphanage. It seemed a fitting use, I replied. Not moving a muscle. They're children with nothing, who dream of an opportunity. You're a young man who was given everything and dreamed of a sports car. I decided to invest in the dream that showed a little more ambition. You're a monster, he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. A psycho. That was my money, my future. Was it? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Did you earn it? Did you invest it? Or did you just expect it, like you expect everything else? He was trembling with rage, his fists clenched. I told my friends we were going to Cabo. I promised them. I was going to use my scholarship refund. I let the silence hang for a beat, letting the sheer absurdity of his complaint fill the room. Will the orphans be taking Cabo from you too, son? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. The question seemed to short-circuit him. He stood there, shaking, a boy king whose entire kingdom had just been revealed to be a cardboard prop. He had no response. There was no script for this. He turned and stormed out of my office, slamming the door so hard the framed photo of his 6-year-old self wobbled on my desk. I reached out and steadied it. The little boy with the lopsided birdhouse was gone. In his place was a stranger I had created, and it was long past time for both of us to meet the man he would have to become. The silence after Cameron slammed the door was more profound than any I had ever paid for. It was the sound of a bridge exploding in spectacular fashion. I allowed myself exactly 60 seconds to feel the weight of it, the shattered glass of the photo frame, the echo of his rage before I picked up the phone. It was time to call in the architect of consequences. "Mr. Sterling," I said when the line connected. "It's Alexander Vance. The situation with my son has escalated. I need you to implement the full severance package we discussed." Sterling's voice was as dry and efficient as a legal brief. "The full package, Mr. Vance? That includes the allowance, the insurance, the credit lines?" "All of it," I confirmed, my eyes on the closed door. "He has declared war on the bank. It's time to show him the vault is empty." "Understood. I'll have the notification sent by end of day." I hung up, a strange mix of grim satisfaction and profound sorrow settling in my chest. This wasn't fun. This was a necessary amputation. The retaliation began almost immediately, and it was as predictable as it was pathetic. My phone started buzzing with texts from concerned friends and distant relatives. "Alex, heard things are rough with Cameron. Maybe you're being a little hard on the kid." "He's just at that age, Vance. We all were idiots at 18. Aren't you? Is it true you're cutting him off completely? That seems extreme." Then came the social media campaign. I don't have accounts myself, but my assistant, bless her, keeps an eye on things. She showed me Cameron's posts, vague, dramatic quotes about betrayal, a black and white photo of a lonely road with the caption, "When the people who are supposed to love you the most become your biggest obstacle." The comments were a chorus of digital hand-wringing and "You're so strong, Cam," from his equally entitled friends. Isabel called, her voice frayed. "Alex, he's devastated. He's posting the most awful things. People are asking me what's going on." "Let them ask, Isabel," I said, my voice tired. "The truth is, we raised a boy who thinks a social media post is a viable response to adversity. That's our failure, not my current policy." "But he's hurting." "He's throwing a tantrum because the vending machine is broken," I replied, sharper than I intended. "And until he learns that the world doesn't owe him a free soda, he will keep hurting. My job is no longer to make it stop. My job is to make sure he learns from it." The most telling part was that Cameron never called me himself. He didn't try to reason, to negotiate, to understand. He just rallied his flying monkeys and sharpened his digital pitchforks. It confirmed everything I feared. He wasn't interested in a relationship with his father. He was interested in restoring his funding. As I listened to Isabel's frantic pleas, I realized the enabling wasn't just cracking. The foundation was gone. She was standing in the rubble, begging me to rebuild the same faulty structure. I ended the call and looked at the stack of papers Sterling had already emailed over. The first was a formal notification of account closure for Cameron's allowance. It was just a piece of paper, but it felt heavier than any contract I'd ever signed. This was the first brick in the wall he would have to learn to climb. I just hoped he wouldn't break his neck in the attempt. Mr. Sterling worked with the cold, dispassionate efficiency of a master surgeon. Within 48 hours, the financial siege of Cameron Vance was fully underway. It was a systematic dismantling of the luxury life support system I had built for him. The first thing to go was the monthly allowance, a generous sum that landed in his account every first of the month, no questions asked, like clockwork. The notification was a simple text alert. I can only imagine the sheer panic when he saw that notification, or more likely, when he tried to buy something and his card was declined. Next was the health insurance. Sterling switched him from the platinum level, zero deductible plan he'd enjoyed his entire life to a bare-bones, catastrophic coverage plan, the kind with copays that would make a working man wince. It was a brutal but necessary lesson. Your health is your responsibility, and quality care has a price. The masterstroke, however, was the credit card, the one I'd given him for emergencies, which Isabel had secretly upgraded to a no-limit card for his everyday needs. Sterling didn't just cancel it. He had the full statement laden with charges for five-star restaurants, designer clothes, and club entries sent to Cameron with the total balance due. The debt was now his, officially, legally. The fallout was immediate and glorious. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. But this time it wasn't concerned relatives. It was Cameron, his voice a frantic, high-pitched shriek of pure, unadulterated panic. My card is declined. What did you do? Excited blixt quitted so de guado the ailate my take $5 bup clear off. My insurance card isn't working at the pharmacy. You can't do this. I have bills. I have debts. I listened to his tirade on speakerphone while I organized the tools in my garage. You're an adult, Cameron, I said, my voice calm. Adults have bills. They have debts. They have to earn the money to pay them. This is insane. You're trying to destroy me. No, I corrected, picking up a wrench. I'm stopping myself from destroying you. You cannot claim to be a self-made victim while living on someone else's dime. The math doesn't work. The calls from his mother resumed. More desperate than ever. Alex, he's hysterical. He says he owes thousands on that card. You have to help him. Isabel, I said, my patience wearing thin. I am helping him. I'm giving him the one thing your coddling and my checkbook never could, a dose of reality. He can either figure it out or he can drown in it. Those are his choices now. I hung up and looked at the pristine, organized garage around me. Every tool had a purpose. Every problem had a logical solution. Fixing my son was proving to be a far messier job than any engine rebuild. You can't just replace the faulty parts. Sometimes you have to let the whole machine break down before it can be rebuilt correctly. The siege was working. The fortress of entitlement was under assault. Now we would see if the boy inside had the mettle to become a man, or if he would simply surrender to the reality he could no longer afford. The financial noose tightening around his neck did exactly what I hoped it would. It forced Cameron into the light. Desperate people make mistakes, and my son, stripped of his financial armor, was becoming very desperate indeed. The first crack appeared when a tuition bill from the prestigious Northwood University arrived at my house by mistake. Cameron had been bragging for months about his early admission to their business program. But this wasn't a bill for the fall semester. It was a final notice for an outstanding application fee and a sternly worded reminder that he was still on the wait list. Wait list. He hadn't been accepted. He'd been hedging his bets, living a lie, all while berating me for not funding a future that didn't exist. Driven by a sickening curiosity, I made a call I should have made months ago. I phoned the guidance counselor at his high school. After navigating a labyrinth of privacy laws by proving I was still technically paying the tuition, I got the truth. Cameron, the counselor said, her voice laced with pity. I'm glad you called, Mr. Vance. We were concerned. He didn't actually graduate with the class. He failed his final exams in calculus and economics. He has 2 incompletes. He was supposed to be in summer school to make them up, but we haven't seen him. The room tilted. The lies weren't just about a car or a vacation. They were the foundation of the person he was presenting to the world. The promising young scholar, the deserving heir, it was all a carefully constructed fiction, a stage play funded by my guilt and his mother's willful blindness. The entire facade of the promising young man was a lie built to keep the money flowing. He wasn't a budding entrepreneur. He was a con artist, and his family had been his easiest marks. I sat in the silence of my study, the counselor's words echoing. I thought of all the times I'd bragged about his acceptance to colleagues, the times I'd defended his arrogance as the confidence of a go-getter. I felt like the world's biggest fool. I hadn't been building a future for my son. I'd been bankrolling his delusion. The anger came first, white-hot and righteous. Then it was washed away by a tidal wave of grief, so profound it stole my breath. I wasn't just mourning the loss of the money. I was mourning the loss of the son I thought I had. The boy in the photo with the birdhouse was gone, and in his place was a stranger I had funded into existence. The investigation was over. The mystery was solved. The terrible father wasn't the one who cut off the funds. The terrible father was the one who had provided them for so long, without ever asking for a receipt. With the facade shattered, I became a spectator to the most painful yet necessary show on earth, Cameron's collision with the real world. It was like watching a baby bird being pushed from the nest, only this bird was screaming obscenities and demanding a parachute. His first foray into employment was, predictably, a disaster. He got a job at a trendy coffee shop, The Daily Grind, convinced it would be easy money. My source, a former employee who now works in my mailroom, told me everything. Cameron was fired on his third day for arguing with a customer who'd asked for a half-calf, extra-hot oat milk latte with a dash of cinnamon. Cameron had apparently told her that her order was pretentious and inefficient. The manager, unimpressed with his unsolicited business advice about streamlining the menu, showed him the door. Next, he tried retail at a high-end electronics store. He lasted a week. He quit, telling his mother it was beneath him to explain smartphone plans to clueless old people. The irony of him, the most clueless person in the room when it came to earning $1, calling others clueless, was almost poetic. The final, most humbling act was the great sneaker sale. I saw the listings myself on a resale site. His prized collection of limited edition, dead stock Jordans and Yeezys, each pair worth more than a week's pay at the jobs he'd scorned, were posted one by one. The captions were desperate. Must sell ASAP. Prices firm. I watched the prices drop over the course of a week as reality set in and his bills came due. He was learning the brutal law of supply and demand, and he was on the wrong side of both. I didn't feel glee. Watching this was like watching a slow-motion car crash. There was a grim satisfaction in seeing the laws of physics and economics finally apply to him, but it was layered with a father's heartache. This was my son, flailing and drowning in a sea of his own making. Isabel called, her voice hollow. He sold his Concord 11s. Alex. He loved those. He's talking about moving into a shared apartment with some guys he met online. I'm scared. Good, I said. The word tasting like ash. He should be scared. Scared is what you feel when you have something to lose. For the first time in his life, he actually does. I drove past the electronics store he'd quit the other day. I saw him through the window, not as a customer, but talking to the manager again. His shoulders slumped, his posture pleading. He was trying to get his job back. The scene should have felt like a victory. Instead, it just felt like a tragedy. This isn't me being terrible, I whispered to the empty car. This is me finally being honest. The vending machine was gone. Now he had to learn how to hunt. And the look in his eyes through that window told me he was finally, desperately, starting to understand how hungry he was. A week after the great sneaker sale concluded, I received a call that surprised me. It was from Eleanor Granger, the director of the Bright Future Orphanage. She wasn't calling for more money. She asked if she could stop by to thank me in person. When she arrived, she didn't look like a charity director. She looked like a kindly grandmother who might bake you cookies, but would also shrewdly manage a multi-million-dollar budget. We sat in the living room, and she declined coffee with a warm smile. Mr. Vance, she began, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I'm not here with my hand out. I'm here with a story. I thought you should know what your remarkable donation is actually doing. She told me about a boy named Miguel. He was 16, sharp as a tack, and had been in the system since he was 8. He'd taught himself to code on a battered, donated laptop, building simple websites and fixing phones for staff in his spare time. With the funds from your donation, Eleanor explained, her eyes shining, we were able to build a proper computer lab. Not just with new machines, but with licensed software, proper workstations, everything. We've partnered with a local tech college for a mentorship program. Miguel is our first participant, He built a new scheduling system for our kitchen staff that saved us 20 hours of administrative work a week. She showed me a picture on her phone. A lanky kid with intense, focused eyes, sitting in front of a bank of sleek monitors. A look of pure absorbed concentration on his face. It was the look Cameron used to get when we built those Lego castles. "This boy," Eleanor said softly, "he has nothing. No family, no safety net, no one to catch him if he falls. And all he's ever wanted is a chance to build something. You gave him the tools. He's doing the rest." The juxtaposition was a physical blow. I had given my own son every tool imaginable. The best schools, the best clothes, unlimited funds, and he had built a house of cards. I had given a stranger nothing but an opportunity, and he was building a future. I thanked Eleanor and saw her out. I stood in the foyer for a long time, the image of Miguel's focused face burning in my mind. I felt a profound, heartbreaking sense of pride for a boy I'd never met, and a crushing wave of grief for the son I had. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. My money, the very thing that had poisoned my relationship with Cameron, was now giving life to a kid with real drive and zero entitlement. The Cameron Vance wing was, ironically, fostering the kind of resilience and ambition I had failed to instill in its namesake. The son I wished I had was thriving in a computer lab downtown. The son I did have was somewhere, probably still complaining about his circumstances. The irony was so thick you could build a wall with it. He showed up on a rainy Thursday evening. There was no dramatic knock, no ringing of the bell. I just looked up from my book, and he was there, standing on the other side of the glass patio door, drenched and shivering. He looked like a ghost of the boy who had demanded a sports car. I unlocked the door, and he stepped inside, water pooling at his feet. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Come on," I said, my voice quiet. "Let's get you a towel." We ended up in the kitchen, the way we always had for serious talks. He sat at the table, shoulders hunched, clutching a mug of coffee I'd made him. The silence stretched, heavy with all the things we hadn't said for years. Finally, he spoke, his voice raw. "You never loved me." I didn't interrupt. "You only loved the idea of me," he continued, staring into his mug. "The perfect son, the heir. When I couldn't be that, you just threw me away. You threw my future away." I let the words hang there. I let him have his truth. Then I set my own coffee down. "I loved you enough to give you everything," I said, my voice low and steady. "And when I saw that everything was breaking you, I loved you enough to give you nothing." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and confused. "I loved you enough to let you fail," I continued. "I loved you enough to let you feel the consequences of your own choices. I loved you enough to stop funding the lie you were becoming, even if it meant you would hate me for it." I leaned forward, my gaze locking with his. "A terrible father would have kept writing checks until you drowned in your own entitlement. A terrible father would have let you become a 40-year-old man still blaming the world for not handing him what he wanted. That, Cameron, is what a father does. He gives his son what he needs, not what he wants, even when it breaks his own heart." The anger drained from his face, replaced by a dawning, weary understanding. The fight was finally gone. "So what now?" he whispered. "Now," I said, "you build something, for real this time, no shortcuts, no handouts." I laid out the terms, not as a punishment, but as a blueprint. "You have 6 months. You will get your GED. You will hold down a job, any job, for 6 consecutive months. You will pay your own rent, your own bills. You will live in the world you thought you were too good for." I paused, letting it sink in. "Do that. Show me you can be a man. Then, and only then, we can talk about being father and son again." He didn't agree. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was a surrender lesson. The war was over. He stood up, placed the empty mug in the sink, and walked out into the rain. I didn't watch him go. I just listened to the sound of the door closing, a soft, final click. It was the sound of a terrible father's greatest hope.